Yeah, gives me great pleasure to introduce Tarun, who's a personal friend as well. So Tarun is the managing director of Matrix Partners India. And prior to joining Matrix, Tarun was the India country manager and board member at StepOut.com, a venture-backed startup. And under his leadership, StepOut became India's #1 online dating site with over 4 million users. He set up the India operations, built the team, transformed the product and brand to suit the Indian market. And eventually he took it to a stage where it could be monetized. Eventually StepOut was acquired by ISE Match.com in September 2013. Before StepOut, Tarun established BigRock.com, incubated by Direct Eye Group. It was India's #1 provider of domain name registration and other web services as well. So as business head of BigRock, he built the business ground up, including setting up the product, striking important offline partnerships, and running a hugely successful TV ad campaign as well. BigRock and other direct entities were later on acquired by Endurance International for about $100 million in January 2014. Tarun initially started his career as a developer at Thesis, where he was responsible for providing IT consulting and outsourcing services for Fortune 100 US clients. During this time, he gained extensive business development experience in the North American market and was also instrumental in winning and executing a $25 million deal for Infosys. By qualification, he is an MBA from ISB, Hyderabad, and an engineer from BJPI, Mumbai. When he's not working with entrepreneurs or answering his 7-year-old son's endless questions, Tarun likes to read, spend time with his friends, sketch, and occasionally enjoy a game of table tennis. Tarun can be followed on Twitter also at Tarun_Davda. So, without wasting much time, I think I'll hand over the mic to Tarun to share his experiences. And Matrix in general, I don't know, definitely all of you must be aware, but they have been investors to Ola, Quicker, Practo, and a lot of other startups at early stage, and we have all seen the growth of these startups now. So, over to Tarun.
Thank you so much. That was a very long introduction. So I actually haven't prepared, I'll be honest. They told me I should come and give a talk on my experience with early stage investing. I actually did not expect so many people. So I think I'll take a quick dipstick of the room just so that I understand what people are here for. I don't have any slides, as you can see, so I'll just probably write down things that people would like to hear from me, and I'm happy to share my experiences, right? So just a quick show of hands. How many, I'm being here for the first time, so it would be good to understand sort of the group background. So how many entrepreneurs here?
No, these are all angel investors.
So everybody here is an angel investor. Okay. And just a quick show of hands. How many angels here have made more than 10 investments? 3. How many 5 to 10? Okay. Less than 5? Okay. And who hasn't who's yet to make the first angel investment? Okay, so mostly in the 0 to 5, 5 to 10 sort of zone. Okay, great. I think before I start, I do have a few thoughts I want to share, and I'll sort of take you through it. But before that, I would love to know what would you all like to hear from? What would be helpful for you all? So we can just pass the mic around, we'll write questions, and I'll try and cover as many of those in my So what would be helpful? Maybe, just start throwing topics, questions, I'll write it down, and then we'll try and cover as much of it as we can.
I would like to know, normally we invest in the startup in the concept stage.
Yeah.
In the startups or us, what kind of matrices we see look for the seed?
Yeah. What do VCs look for? Okay.
And is there any because as angel investors we look at the strong revenue model, kind of things, unit economics. Is there a difference of your
Sure. Okay.
how you guys?
Sure. Okay, we'll cover that. What else?
What are the sectors that you are currently most excited about?
Yeah.
And maybe an extension of that question is it more about the sector that you believe in or the founder team or both?
I think great question. This was something that I was going to cover. I will cover it. I will tell you every firm is different, but I'll at least tell you the way Matrix thinks about it. Right.
What is the right stage or the time to approach us?
Yeah. Okay? Right. Like being tech versus traditional. Yeah. Yeah. Being naive with investors, what should be our exit strategy be? Like being very early in this stage and first time investors, what should our exit strategy be? So, as an angel, what should be your exit strategy? Okay.
Valuation. How do you determine the right valuation? That's the key.
If I knew, then I would be doing a better job at what I do. Yeah. Okay.
More from your startup experience, the points of friction which you had with the investors.
Okay. Investors. Sorry? No, I think as a founder, when I was running a company, were there friction areas? Yeah.
Yeah, how do angel investors avoid getting sidelined in larger funds?
Yeah.
High cash flow, high growth versus medium growth, low cash flow.
Actually, I'll put it as a growth versus profitability. Yeah.
How do you draw a line between helping the management and really interfering? So that seventh point becomes the either way. Friction with investors and friction with
Founders. Yeah. Okay.
I think this is good for now.
This is good? Okay. Excellent. If there's anything else which, okay, maybe we'll take a
What
thought.
do you look at while investing? Profitability or the valuation?
Yeah, so I'll cover that as to what do VCs look for. Yeah. Anything else? Maybe last one or two quick things. Okay. So the good news is that I think I was broadly going to cover everything, but it's always good to have the question just so that we get a photo through. I'm going to start with at least the way I think about the investing business and the life cycle. Starts with a thesis for most people, and I'll cover what we look for. After that comes on to you source a company. We met Beardo right now, and everyone keeps meeting companies. There is a phase of evaluation. There is a phase of converting or winning the deal, and this is actually a very hard part, and I'll actually talk about some examples. Generally, the deals which are hardest to win are the ones that make you the money. The rest of them actually don't matter, right? After that is impact, which as investors, obviously we try to do a lot. Exit or value creation, and then basically leading back to the thesis, right? So if I look at the overall life cycle of typically as an investor, where do we spend most of our time? How do I think about this business? This broadly life cycle, and I'm pretty sure everybody over here, in some shape or form, thinks about all these things at various stages of the investment, right? Before I get into this, just so that I think I understood your background and how many investments you all have done, let me share a very quick overview for some of you who may not know Matrix and what stage we invest at. So I'll tell you a little bit about Matrix before we get into these answers, right? So Matrix, how many of you all have heard about Matrix Partners already? Okay, so most of them, right? But I'll just add some more color for the rest of you who don't. So Matrix is an early stage VC firm. We started in the US in 1970s. Have been part of some very large companies being created along the way, including Apple Computers, FedEx, Symantec, all household names. Most recent large company that we backed in the US was a company called Oculus, which is the VR headset that Facebook acquired. 11 months into the company, Facebook acquired it for a little over $1 billion. In India, we set up the fund in 2006. We also have a China fund. What we look at in India is, I think we're now on our second fund in India. Each fund has been around $300 million. Focus in Fund 1, we started in 2006. This was started by Amish Bajaj, some of you may know him. He was the founder and CEO of Bazi, which was acquired by eBay and is now run as eBay India. He keeps making this joke that he had got all aspects of his business plan right when he was starting Bazi, except for one minor point. Anyone knows what that minor point is? He forgot that there are no internet users in India, right? In 2006. And kudos to him, he still sold the company for 55 million, which is an achievement in itself. So I think when he started in 2006, the internet penetration in India was close to zero. So I think as a fund, we focused a lot more on offline and consumer, and we talk about sort of which sectors will require tech versus traditional. Today, Matrix since 2011-12, when we actually started seeing mobile and 3G, we've completely pivoted the firm. We've seen our portfolio companies pivot. Us as a firm, we completely pivoted to tech and early stage investing. That's when I joined Matrix in 2012. Yeah, 2012. And today we don't actually look at traditional offline companies at all. We invest in companies which are either tech-led or tech-enabled, right? And we'll talk about some tech-enabled companies that we've invested in. Right stage at which we enter. So again, some of you said what stage to approach VCs. The answer is it depends on the VC. Typically, there are VCs who will do seed stage investments. So we typically do, I would say, 4 to 6 seed stage investments every year. We typically do, I would say, another 3 to 4 Series A investments every year. Series A for us is a $2 to $5 million check. Seed is around $1 million, $1.5 million kind of check. And then we also do Series B round of investment, which could be anywhere from $6 million to $15 million, right? And then there are some VCs who will also do C rounds and D rounds. We don't do that. We don't end. I mean, we'll continue to support companies in those rounds once we're in the company, but we will not enter a company at a C stage, right? So again, it's different. But I would say most VCs in India follow this model. The center of the box is A rounds, and then they will go a little bit towards the seed and a little bit towards the B, right? There are investors who enter at B and C rounds, but most of them are global investors. They aren't like a SoftBank or a DST or they will enter at a Series C, Series D when the company is much larger, right? But most VCs in India, all the names that you heard of, Sequoia, Excel, Matrix, Ceph, all of us typically enter at Series A and go a little bit back and forth, right? Check sizes I've told you, what we look for I've told you. Let's talk a little bit about this. How many of you actually start with a thesis? When somebody says, what sectors do you all look for? How many of you will actually start with a thesis and have a strong positive thesis on before you're making an investment?
I don't have thesis, but checkboxes are there.
What kind of, when you say checkboxes, is it?
In terms of single founder, not to invest. So you got various checkboxes saying that this is what you look into companies before you actually put it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you my learning, and I'm going to, this is something that I think I have learned over the last 4 to 5 years. So I think it's important to have a negative thesis. Why is this important? It will actually help you prevent from making mistakes. Right? I think having a positive thesis is less important because the largest companies in the world have been created when nobody had a thesis. Facebook, nobody had a thesis of social. There are very few companies, I don't know, and we talk about the Ola story, which Desh has also been part of. We actually had a negative thesis on the cab industry before we invested in Ola. And I'll tell you why we still went ahead and made that investment earlier, right? But I think it is important to have a negative thesis because it actually helps you declutter and you know what to spend time in and what not to spend time. I think for me that's the value of the negative thesis. You know exactly what are the areas that you don't want to pursue. Right? And so we look at a lot of global trends. We look at companies which in US and China would have scaled and for some reason then just sort of fell off a cliff. There is generally a reason why those companies don't scale beyond that. And I think those are instructive, at least as far as we are concerned as investors. Right? I think it's important to have a loose positive thesis, and I generally call this loose because the reality is, founders have spent, generally the best founders have spent 10,000 hours thinking about a problem. They are they have got some unique insight on a space, and it's very hard for anyone spending a few hours thinking about a problem to come up with a very strong, tight thesis. Right? Why is it, when I say what is a large positive thesis, for example, I have a very strong positive thesis on health. I have a strong positive thesis on brands which will use direct customer connects in order to, typically, the ITCs and all the FMCG brands have been built by do a lot of TV broadcasting and then distribute through retailers. I think there is a large positive thesis I have where I think there are companies which will be built by direct relationship with the customers, where they are directly selling to customers. That is a thesis, but it's very broad, as you can see. It's not that I think men's grooming with this thesis with this thing will do well, right? It could do well. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm just saying that it's important to have a fairly broad positive thesis. One thing that again we think about is strong opinions loosely held. So be open to changing your mind. The best founders will always come and challenge you, and they are the best founders because they will challenge you. They will come back and disprove something, and I'll talk about the Ola story specifically, where despite us having a negative thesis in the cab industry, Bhavish actually proved us wrong. We invested in him because we said, wow, he knows so much more about this space than we ever knew, and I think he is right? And we made that call. I think it's important to do a little bit of global tracking. A lot of people have asked me, what is all this thesis? How can you spend time on it? I think the way I look at it is I spend maybe an hour, 2 hours a day, and it's generally not every day. It's spread out. Sometimes over weekends I'll spend more time reading, just understanding what is happening globally. I think these are instructive. In India, we are in this unique position where we can actually see what has happened in US, what has happened in China, and a lot of it is instructive. I'm not saying you only back copycats and videos, that's not the extent, but the reality is that why is e-commerce big? Because we've seen it scale in US and China. Why is cabs big? We've seen it scale in US and China. A lot of the investors which have seen that, you'll also find this, by the way, it's unfair, but it's true, but a lot of the large investors who put in money at late stages, which is Series C, Series D round of companies, they want to look at a company and point to and say, oh, that is the company he's building. And if they can't see that parallel where it's scaled in US and China, we have some such companies on our portfolio which are fantastic companies, we think they'll do very well, but they do struggle to raise very large rounds of funding from global investors, because that global investor sitting in the US and in China and writing that $100, $200 million check can't point to something and say, oh, this is what he's building, or this is what she's building, right? So I think it's important and instructive for us again as investors to actually do a little bit of global tracking. I think last thing is just be open to changing your opinion. Just constantly, when I meet people, I generally, at least the way we think about it is we try and meet every single company in a sector before we invest. So when we invested in Ola, I think I had met 40 plus cab companies before we decided to pick Ola. We made an investment in a mobile POS company called Swipe. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the company. Fantastic company, fantastic founder. Let me take a quick, maybe 10-second detour and tell you about that story, because I think again it's very instructive. As VCs, somebody says go to VCs, good for. So I think this was a time like 3 years ago where everybody, Square had become very big in the US. Jack Dorsey from Twitter went and started it, raised a lot of money, scaled very quickly, and suddenly in India we had like I think 35 or 40 copycats, right? And I remember, so this was a deal that one of my colleagues led. He emailed every single founder, got in touch with every single founder. The founder, he met everybody. We had actually liked one of those 35 companies. There was one founder who refused to respond to our emails, right? Normally people just give up, right? You're like, okay, I found somebody good. I think he's going to build a good business. But let me just go ahead and make an investment. And one of the principles that we stand by is we will not invest until we know every single company in that sector. Because you don't know what you don't know. That guy could be the guy who will build the billion-dollar company in this business, and you could be stuck with the second largest outcome. The other thing, unfortunately for us as VCs, and I think even for it's less true for angels, but mostly true for angels, the value creation curve is unfortunately less. Where the one company in the sector will generally take 90% of the value created. The second company will take maybe 8% of the value created, and all of the companies put together will result in less than 2% of the value creation. And hence it becomes very important as at least as a venture investor and also as an angel, where are you in that one company or are you in the number two company, right? All of us have heard of Ola and Taxi for sure, right? Does anyone know what's the value creation differential between Ola and Taxi for sure today? Taxi for sure was a great exit by any means, right? $200 million exit. Anyone, any idea what is the value creation differential? 95% versus 5%. Top two companies in India, I'm not counting Uber because that's a global company, but top two companies in India, one company created 5% value, the company, and by the way, it's not that Ola was 25 times bigger than Taxi for sure when we acquired it. We were 2 or 3 times bigger than Taxi for sure when we acquired it. But the value creation by that company was 95%. That's the truth. Most of tech-enabled businesses tend to be winner take all or winner take most, which is what we've seen, right? So coming to that Swipe story, so we kept chasing that founder. Founder did not reply, was not interested in raising money from investors, had actually had a bad experience with some investor in his past life, and he said, you know what, VCs are assholes. I'm not going to reach out to them, I don't want to talk to them, I don't want to raise money from them. My colleague went and sat outside his office. He made my colleague wait for 4 hours, came out after the 4 hours of making him wait and said, I'm busy today, meet me on Saturday at Beach Candy Club at 7 p.m. And my colleague was like, WTF, like, what is this? But he went there because, again, the founder was testing him as much as we test the founder. The founder's like, I've heard VCs don't work. I want a VC who really works hard with me once I take them out. So my colleague showed up at 7 p.m. He reached there, again was made to wait for an hour and a half before the founder showed up. By this time, trust me, 99% of the investors in India would have given up, right? He showed up at 8:30 over there in the evening versus 7 o'clock that was promised. Had a fantastic 1 hour discussion. We clearly figured out in that one meeting that he is head and shoulders above the number 2 guy that we met. Okay? We pursued him for the next 1 month where similar kind of behavior continued. Eventually, I think we proved him wrong and he said, okay, no, these guys are different. This is not the typical venture investor that I've heard such bad things about. We signed a deal with him. He had, I think, 3 other offers on the table at similar or higher valuations. Went with Matrix for the reasons I described. I think from that day onwards, he is 10 minutes ahead of time for every meeting. So it's not that that's the person he was just testing us as investors. Right? And hence it becomes again, and I think in that sector, it's still early, but my view is similar sort of value creation. And hopefully you'll be on this side and not on this side. Right? So it's important sort of making sure that you're trying and meeting every company. So I think on the thesis, broadly, like I said, we call it a prepared mind. Because even I was seeing a lot of questions that were being asked to the Beardo team, right? It's if you aren't prepared about that sector, you don't know what questions to ask. If you don't know what questions to ask, you will not be able to get the pulse of the founder. So I think this, as far as I'm concerned, what I think of Thesis is, it's not about having some, great, McKinsey, BCG kind of, 10-step study. Just being smarter on the sector. Do you know what questions to ask? Do you know what are the 1 or 2 things which are very critical that will actually help that founder win? Right? And that's where I spend my time. Just thinking of it as a prepared mind. Right? By the way, it's very quickly the negative thesis again. And I'll come back to this again when we talk about the like source. I think I've covered some part of it. At least our view is meet all companies in the space. We try to be the number 1 or number 2 worst case VC to have ever reached out to a company. So last year as a firm we are 8 people. We met 2,500 companies. Out of 2,500 companies, we invested in 4 or 6 maybe, I don't even know, but somewhere in that range, right? But the good news is out of those 2,500, and we try and track this because it's a metric that's important to us. We generally want to be the first or the second investor because how quickly you are to reach out to the founder determines valuation, determines speed of closure, and determines are you in that this bracket or are you in this bracket. Because if somebody else has beaten you to meeting the founder first, he already has an edge, he or she already has an edge in the process, right? So last year, for example, I think we did the metric, we were 70% of those 2,500 companies, we were the first or the second investor to have ever met that company, right? I'm not talking about angels obviously are separate, but we compare ourselves to other tier 1 VC firms, right? Evaluation, I'm going to take, I think, Mitesh's question first. So what do most of you look for? I know, the standard answer is I look at founder, I look at business model, I look at market. What does everyone over here look for generally? Let me word the question a different way. Is founder more important or is market more important? So market is is market not important or?
It's just important. When you are putting across, even if the market is great, founders cannot execute, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Founders can pivot, can change. If founders are great, they can make the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're in the same zone. There are funds which don't think that way. So we have a very clear founders first is what we sort of call it. Very, very clear founders first thinking. We believe that great founders build great companies. We We don't believe great markets build great companies. Again, coming to the Ola example, all of us know there was Meru, there was Mega Cabs, there was Easy Cabs, there was Taxi, there was Tab Cab, there was Quick Cab in Delhi, there was Fast Track in Chennai. How many of them created even like $20 million of value? None. All of us were taking cabs before Ola came around. All of us were taking cabs before Uber came around. It takes a brilliant entrepreneur to figure out what is the dislocation that they need to exploit in the market. And the dislocation in the case of an Ola or Uber was mobile phone real-time tracking, and we can get into the nuances of the model. There's a lot of nuances. It's not just a mobile, this thing, it's very, very different. I'll give you a small example, right? In the case of Meru, the car was actually owned by the company and the drivers were leasing out the car every day. You know what used to happen in Meru? In the first week that a brand new car came on the road, the silencer, the gearbox, the seats, everything was changed and put second-hand parts. And the driver took all the original parts and sold it in the market. Every single car. Which is why all of us when we drove, when we ride in Meru, you're in a new car but it's all rickety. Because he's gone to a local mechanic and changed every single part. He doesn't care about the car. Second thing, because he's leased the car from Meru, the distribution of the rides was always in round robin. So if you called Meru and you said I need a car, they say okay, I'll send somebody, but that guy could be in Bandra when you are sitting in Worli. There was another cab in Worli, but Meru couldn't give it to you. Because they've taken rent from 200 drivers in Bombay that day, they have to equally distribute those bookings to all those 200 drivers. Right? So for your customer, as a customer, your wait time was up, and very often again, because it's round robin and because all the drivers knew that, when they got a short ride, they used to refuse it. Because they knew that my turn will come again after another 200 people have got their turns. In the case of Ola, it's very simple. The closest driver gets the booking. And you give the driver enough tools to figure out where is, so all our drivers have these heat maps where they know, okay, it's evening time, here is where the demand is going to be, let me go and drive and park my car and wait for bookings. Every single unique aspect of the business model is to optimize driver earnings and to optimize availability for the customer. Right, so we can get into those nuances better, right? So I think it's founders first, I agree, it is absolutely that, and I think all of us should continue to look at that, and we'll talk a little bit about the nuance over here in terms of where founders first comes in. I think markets are important, but in India, at least what I have seen, founders create markets. Most markets in India are not obvious to me. We'll talk about a health tech company called Practo. I think it's one of the most unique companies that hopefully the world will see. It will probably be one of India's first global companies to come out of India. There is no global parallel. There is really no global parallel for a Practo, right? But it takes a special person like a Shashank to put it all together and say, this is the model and this is what's going to work, right? So great founders create markets. They actually define how the market will look like 5 years from today or 10 years from now. And I think that's where it becomes important. Talk a little bit about what we talk about, which is founder, business, market fit, right? I think it's great to say founders are what everyone looks for. I think there's no investor which will say I don't look at team, but I think there's a nuance, right? For a very strategically complex business, right? You need a founder who can think very strategically, who can think about hard issues, who can think ahead of time. For example, an Ola, right? It's an out-and-out execution business. It's an out-and-out execution business. When we backed Bhavish, he was 25 years old, 24, 25. He hadn't seen the world. He had never hired anyone in his life. He had never fired anyone in his life. He actually, when we asked him what's your business model, he went and Googled business model. He Googled business model. He tells us that today. When I asked him what's your org structure, he went and Googled org structure. He didn't tell me all this before the investment. He told us all this after we made the investment. He actually said, Tarun, I didn't understand any of the questions. He had done 2 years in a Microsoft lab where he was doing some research paper. So he had never actually built a company in his life. But the edge we saw was there was an incredible execution edge. Incredible. I think there's only one person on this planet who can go against Travis or Uber and give him a run for his money. There's only one person in this country. And it was very clear when he was 25 years old that he's going to be that person. In hindsight, it all looks great, but even at that time, it was very, very clear. I'll give you examples. He was in Bombay. And he called me up, I think this was a Tuesday, when the company was maybe 200 or 250 people. And he called me on a Tuesday evening and he's like, Tarun, we need to move to Bangalore. And I said, fine, okay, I understand Bangalore is the right place to build a tech company, but why Bangalore? He said, no, you know what, we're facing some regulatory heat in Bombay. But more importantly, I can't build a large tech company in Bombay because I just can't get the engineers. I still remember telling him, I think the answer is right. I don't know if the timing is right. So let's think more about it. He called me on Sunday evening. He had moved 250 people to Bangalore. He had identified the office space. All 250 people were transported to Bangalore. Rent agreement, office space, everything was good. 4 days. 250 people moved. I remember we heard about the Uber launch, and Bhavish called me up, I think, the day before we found out about Uber's launch, and we had just figured out that Uber is launching at the top end of the market. So they will start with the BMWs and the Audis and the Mercedes, and then they were going to go down in the market. At that time, Ola did not have a luxury product. And I remember Bhavish calling, again, it was like 7 in the evening, we had just heard this Uber strategy in India. They were launching with Bombay, and Bhavish said, I can't have a one day where Uber has luxury cars on the road and I don't have luxury cars. I said, but Bhavish, it's 7 in the evening, where are you going to find these luxury cars? He's like, that will you do. Next morning, 9 a.m., we had, I think, 50 or 70 BMWs, Mercedes, Audis, Toyota Fortuners on the road. And he said there will not be one day where somebody opens an Uber app. And this was the first day Uber ever launched. It's not that Uber was as well known or as big as it is now, right? But an execution hustle of saying that, you know what, I will not allow my competitor to have a single day's advantage on me. And I will do it in a 12-hour period. I will arrange 70 new cars with 70 new drivers with 70 contracts all in place. I don't think there are too many people in this country who can do that. And hence I'm saying that I think when we think about evaluation, it's important to know what is it that is critical to the success in this business. And I think we picked very early that in Ola, I think the business model is fairly clear. Once you understand it, it's actually very straightforward. But then it's about executing on that repeatedly. And I think for us it was important that this person has an execution muscle, right? He's not perfect. No, none of us are perfect away. He has his own holes, right? But where he is just outstanding, and I think Mitesh can share enough war stories about Ola. There's a joke in Ola, right? Married people don't last in Ola. They just don't, because they all are working. I think Bhavish, I remember, even today, he's, I think, 4 years into the investment, $5 billion of value created. I sent him an email last weekend. I got a 2-minute response time. He's the only founder where even today, if I send him an email at any time of the day, any time of the night, I will get a response in 2 minutes. His intensity is incredible. I don't know if you have some, scars on your back to share in terms of war stories.
He's the only CEO who comes first in the office and leaves the last.
Yeah. He still takes the first flight out wherever he travels, 6 a.m. flight, and the last flight back home wherever he travels. He doesn't need to do that. He's built a very large company. He can slow down a little, but he knows that the day he slows down, Uber will eat him up, right? But just carrying on at that intensity level. So even today, when I meet him for dinner, I met him last week. We were with him till 11. He went back to office at 11 o'clock at night, and I think he had meetings scheduled from 11 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 a.m. And his team is all sitting in the office waiting for him to come back. I think, that level of execution hustle is required to create these companies. And I'm not saying all our founders have it, but to build a company that's competing against Uber, to build a company that requires that level of intensity, you need that, right? I'll give you another example, right? There are a lot of us, meet these very young IIT engineers, just out of college, and we say, hey, you know what, this is the formula that seems to be working. These are the founders that are creating value. We've actually figured out, there's a small nuance, where we figured out that some of these people actually can build companies, but they are very good for these app is the business companies. They're actually not good to create companies. Bhavish is a rare exception where there's a strong offline execution on the ground component to the business. How much, I don't know if Bhavish spends even 10% of his time on the Ola app. 90% plus of his time is spent on supply side. How do I get more cars? How do I get more drivers? How do I solve customers' issues? The app is just 10% of it. But he's a rarity. Most of these young guys who have never worked anywhere, never worked for anyone, never, run a small team within a large company, very, very difficult for them to build some of these businesses. Now, would I back some of them in an app-only business where he's building like the next WhatsApp or the next Snapchat or one of these similar app is the business? Absolutely. Because I think that's their edge. They can look at it. But sometimes, when you spend time with these founders, you just feel that they don't have the ground level insight, the ground level understanding of what it takes to build a business which has a strong offline element. right? So I think it's important to take that nuance and say, is this founder fit for this business? He could be fit for 5 other businesses, but the business that he's building, is he a great fit for that? The skills that are required for this business, the skills the founder has, how much is the worth? And I think that's important. We've made mistakes and we've learned from those mistakes. Where we've actually, backed who we think was a fantastic founder, great product, great this thing, the guy just couldn't sell. I don't know how many of you have backed a SaaS business away. You've done a SaaS business, right? Do you think SaaS is a product business?
Definitely the product is there. There's no doubt that right product on the SaaS, there's nothing you can go off. But definitely if it's B2B, you need enterprise selling.
Absolutely right.
If you can't sell
I learned that after making 2 mistakes. I backed founders who are outstanding product guys, probably could build the best product in this country. They couldn't sell to save their life. Right? And I think SaaS, as far as I'm concerned, it's only a sales business. You need to break down the entire sales process into a science and literally every step of the way know, here are the 10 checklists, here is the stage, I need to reach out to these people, how many meetings are required to get me to the next sale, how many, what's the conversion ratio, what's the funnel look like. It is a sales business.
Yeah, it's a defined area.
It's a complete out and out sales business. So if you're backing a founder, which I've done by the way, and I've learned from the mistake, is you're backing a founder who comes and shows you this fantastic product, but he cannot sell. It's going to be very, very rare for that founder to be able to actually create a large SaaS business. Right? So again, it comes down to really understanding what is the fit for the founder for that particular business. Right? Winning. I don't know how is getting into the best deals a problem for angel investors. I don't know if at that stage it's as competitive. Have you ever tried to do a deal and not been able to get into the deal?
Lost to VCs.
Lost to VCs, okay. Yeah.
And quite a good ones. Haptic to BizRocket is now Davda. So trying to lead and build it.
Somebody else says. I think that is unfortunately the situation on the ground. Okay. What else? Between angels and investors, is there a lot of competition?
Shopping does happen. Yeah, that happens. I mean,
And it's generally for valuation. So I think we face the same issue, maybe just compounded by 10, because every investor is willing to write a check. Every investor knows this formula, so they know whether you enter at a 8 million pre or a 10 million pre or a 12 million pre is irrelevant. Either you will lose your $3 million of funding that you give the company, or you will make the 3 into 300. There's only 2 outcomes. There's no middle outcome for us as investors, because those middle outcomes don't move the needle for us as a firm. We don't want to be in these 20, 30, 40 million companies. We want to be in the companies that create $400-500 million at least of outcome, because if we own 10% at exit, that's 30-40 million of value created for us. That's a 10% return for us as a fund. That's when it makes sense. Otherwise, a $30 million exit where I take out 3-4 million is irrelevant. It doesn't move the needle for us, right? So most investors actually, I don't know what kind of experiences you all have had sitting on the other side as existing investors in a company. Most high quality VCs will never walk away from a deal, whether it's a 8 million pre or a 10 million pre or a 12 million. That's the truth. We will never walk away from a deal because of price. Never. Unless the guy is ridiculously asking for a $30 million valuation when he deserves 10, that's different. And if somebody is willing to pay 30, well, more power to them. Right? But it's very rare. It doesn't really happen. Right? So we'll talk about winning. I think we've also, fortunately, I think in the last 5 years, I remember we've lost maybe 1 or 2 deals. Fortunately for us, there were good deals to lose, so we're happy we're not in those companies today. But I think we've picked up a few things along the way. Actually, I had one more point out here which I will cover later. I'll just come back to this. In terms of winning, right, I think it's very, very important that you really establish your edge in the process very early. And I think we try to do that with the best founders. We recognize that the best founders will always have more than one term sheet on the table. And the firm that they pick is the firm that has gotten to them early. By definition, if you're early, you have a better rapport. You have a better rapport. You found the guy when there is no competition. You're on the front foot. You know the guy doesn't have options. The dynamic it's important to establish the dynamic early. Second is, this actually helps us. Again, we ask the right questions. So So there's a strong content-based edge, right? And we talk about some examples where it's very important to actually build that content edge. What does a founder want? The founder is saying, listen, I'm getting money from three guys. Beyond the point, the color of the money is the same. What is different? Well, okay, valuation, somebody will pay more, somebody will pay less. But at the end of the day, the best founders understand it's not the slice of the pie, it's the size of the pie. Can this investor actually help me create a larger company? And most of the founders are actually looking for areas in which you can complement them, areas in which you can help them actually see the market, and they actually look at guys who will help them build the company. So we'll talk about this interference versus involvement. We see ourselves as company builders. We actually don't see ourselves as VCs. So generally when we enter a company, most of these founders don't have a L-1 team. We actually help them build out the entire L-1 team. Every single person that reports to a founder, we are instrumental in making that hire happen. We either help identify the candidate, we help interview the candidate, we help source the candidate, we help reference checks the candidate so that we know exactly who we are hiring. And we then help the guy sort of with strategy and direction and all these things. But it's very important that that content edge is built early. The minute you enter second, third, fourth VC to reach out to the founder, you're on the back foot. From day one, then you're optimizing for, okay, can I pay a better price than the other guy who's already there? So I think it's important, at least for you all, some of you who are looking at deals. I have been in cases where we have been on the side where there are angels who want to do the deal, we want to do the deal. I think a founder will generally prefer the VC because they know there's a steady stream of investment that can come from the VC potentially if the company does well. We have got founders who have come and said, you know what, I'm going to take your money, but I want you to carve out so much for these angels because I think these angels have been outstanding support. They've helped me think about the business more succinctly. They've helped me think about issues which I've not thought about, and they've generally been very helpful. We have got founders who come and told us that no, you know what, out of the $3 million, please carve out 200K or 300K or 400K for this particular set of angels. So I think it does happen. So to the extent I think that is something that you might want to think about is when I'm meeting this company, what is the quality of questions? Do I know this space better than anyone else? Can I be helpful to this young guy who's building out the company? He may not have options today, but if he were to have options, I should be the one he should still pick. Right? And we have actually got cases. By the way, at least just for the sake of this room, we never got out angels. We are very key. You may not get the entire allocation, but we believe in making sure that the founder has enough sort of advisors and mentors to go out because frankly sometimes we don't have the time. If we've done 10 deals in the year, I can't spend time with all 10. Right? But an angel who's done 1 or 2 in those years, he can be a good supplement. Sometimes the angels come with a lot of deep expertise in that sector. A lot of you have actually run and built businesses and scaled businesses. So that kind of experience is invaluable. A lot of VCs actually haven't had that experience. So we actually welcome angels coming into the deal with us. Right? Come back to the BRC. How often do you all actually reference check a founder before you all invest? 2, 3. So I think there's a difference between a background check and a reference check. Typically what companies do is this background check where they'll check, do you have a criminal record, do you have any, did you go to the school you said, did you get the marks that you got, did you, all those basic check the box things. I think those are irrelevant. I think it's a waste of time.
Talk to customers and old companies, fellows.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what we follow at Matrix, and I think it's important for some of you if you are looking to sort of get into companies that VC funds are running into. We reference check the founders to the extreme. I would have spoken to Bhavesh's. So before we invested in Ola, I was doing the reference checks on Bhavesh. I think I spoke to 35 people. Every single person who had ever had any meaningful interaction with Bhavesh. Right from his IIT hostel mate to the guy who he shared the dorm with to Bhavesh was running a blog. So I went and I remember this guy was doing his PhD in the US, the other guy I spoke to. I went through LinkedIn, found out that okay, Bhavesh had, there was a 6-month period before he started Ola where he was running this blog on startup stories. He used to just write, some articles online when he was at Microsoft. And I found out there was another guy who was helping him do stories. I reached out to him, I think he was in University of Southern California. He was shocked to get my email. I said, listen, we are meeting this one founder who we're interested in, we're thinking of, we're evaluating the company for an investment. Very discreetly, I would like to get your feedback. 90% of the times it doesn't go back to the founder, 10% of the times it goes back to the founder. That's fine, we're just doing our work, we're doing our own work, right? told me things which I had never imagined. Like because he was one person that actually worked with Avish in an entrepreneurial role, because starting a blog, writing stories every day requires some level of, it's not a job where somebody's telling you what to do, right? Spoke to him, he was in the US, it was a 20-minute call, but I think doing 15, 20, 30 of those calls really helps you understand the person you have. It helps you understand their spikes, it helps you understand their value system, it helps you understand their areas of development. All of them have areas of development. Some of them have big goals at the time we invest. 24, 25, 28-year-old kids, they are going to have goals. But it's important to know what those goals are, so that again you can complement them. You can make sure that, okay, when I invest, here are the 2 key people I need to hire, because the founder doesn't have the skill set. So you can't do that if you don't know the guy's goals. And they actually respect you for that, because you're doing it in a good way. You're not telling him, oh, you're an idiot, you don't know this, let me get somebody. You're doing it very smartly without the guy even realizing that it's a goal, but internally he knows it's a goal. So he's actually happy that you're bringing in somebody that's going to supplement that or complement it, right? So we, literally, I think we've done this in, every case. There are times where our view is very different from the view that the reference checks bring up. We always trust the reference checks. It's very hard in a 1 hour, 2 hour, before you invest, how many meetings do you have with the founder? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's 6 1-hour interactions, half-an-hour interactions.
And one visit to the office.
One visit to the office. I don't think anyone is smart enough to really read a person in 5 or 6 1-hour meetings. It's extremely hard. You can pick up you can pick up stuff about the person. You can know, okay, is this person broadly good or not good? But good to great is very hard to pick up in those 6 meetings. So I think we have found, and by the way, there are people who are fantastic at faking it. There are people, there are guys who have mastered the art of selling. There are people who have mastered the art of interview taking. They can, in those 4 5 meetings, how hard is it? All of us can put on a mask and sound really smart, right, for one. But the real thing is, when it comes down to the hard issues, is that guy going to crumble, or is that guy going to, go and break the wall? These things you can't find out in a 1-hour meeting. You just cannot. It's humanly impossible. But you can, because when somebody has spent 1 year working with that person and seeing those similar situations, how did this other person react? It's very easy to get. So I have been in cases where we have really liked a founder or a team. We have spoken to 30 people about this person, and we have found out, we haven't heard the best things. The other issue in India is nobody wants to say bad things about people. Nobody wants to say bad things about people. Every person is like, he's good, he's nice, oh, he's a very nice guy, he smiles at everybody, sees me every time. Right? I'm like, I wish that built good companies, but it doesn't, unfortunately. Right? So I think the other thing is that you have to know what are the questions to ask and really push for, but tell me what the issue with this guy is. And I think when you end that 30-minute call, I think it's very easy to find out whether it was a good ref check or it was a table thumping ref check. You have to put your money in this person, otherwise you're making a mistake. If you don't hear that passion, that energy, that like, listen, oh my God, he's the best person, he's fantastic, I would love to work with him, I would put my money into him, I really have been chasing him to put some money into his company, but he's not been taking my money. That's what you want to hear. You don't hear, oh, he's a good guy, chala, he was a good team member. People will always say, good, Bill. Average people don't create large outcomes. So what we look for is really table thumping. That's why when we meet 2,500 companies, we invest in 4. It's because of this, because we would have ref checked 400 of them. But only 4 of them came back with a very hard thumping ref check. So I would say, to the extent you all can, do some of these things. I think you will see that your own sort of hit rate and success rate in angel investments will go up significantly. And it's hard work. I spend more time reference checking a founder than spending time with the founder myself. Because I don't trust my judgment as much as I trust the judgment of 30 people who actually work with them. Right? You will, by the way, find out moral issues, ethical issues. You can't pick that up in a 1-hour meeting. You just cannot. Is this guy going to swindle money? I ask questions to the point where two of your, I'll give you an example. 2 hostel roommates, right? One guy told me, what? I kept pushing him, but tell me what's the issue, tell me an issue. He's like, there were times he used to borrow money, he never used to pay me back. I just don't invest in. I just don't want to back people who don't have a very strong value system. these things you can't find out in a one-hour meeting with the founder. There's no one in this room is capable of doing that. We are not mind readers. So I think it's important to do that to the extent again. It is work. It's about really picking up the phone, calling up people, asking each person, tell me 3 other people I can talk to, and eventually you get the entire universe of people that has touched this person in any way, shape or form. Whether it's school, college, city, etc.
Because of that, you found that the reference check you found is that is not good, but that is going to take up me and you lost all investment opportunity.
It happens. I think it's too early to say, frankly, because we look at some of these things as more as exits, and there are companies which are today very large companies, but we know that we still won't want to be there. Because when there's a fork in the road, and the fork in the road comes at the time of an exit, how the founder treats you is unknown. How much money is being taken under the table is unknown. So we may have lost companies which today some of them are big names. I'm not sure I would still want to be in some. Despite of it, because it's also about the journey. It's also about the journey. So I remember one founder, I won't name this because it's a very it's a public disaster of this company. A lot of us it has been written about it. We met this person, I remember it was December 2012. The company was being built by 10 or 12 very sharp guys from one of the IITs. Met them, spent time with them, walked out saying, oh my god, these guys are amazing. Spent more time. All of them were 3rd or 4th year dropouts from IIT. All of them, all 10 of them. And we were like, oh my god, this is like a fantastic team. They've given up the IIT, some very smart guys. The more time I started spending with the main founder, I figured out that his wiring in the brain is messed up. Very smart, extremely capable. But there was an animal inside the head which we started testing in one or two meetings. That animal came out. There was a time the company was going like this until it fell flat. Even on the way up, and I remember I still have that email where as a partnership we had circulated our thoughts on should we invest, should we not invest. We had an option to get that company for 1 crore for 33%. The company was last valued at $400 million before it came to zero. I think it will go to zero, but we'll see. I remember one of our partners sending an email to the rest of us saying, it may very well be a $1 billion company, I just don't want the journey. I just don't want that journey. It's a 10-year journey as a VC. I don't want that journey which is like this, where you're getting sleepless nights, the guy's calling you in the middle of the night, there's friction between the founders and the investor. I don't want the journey. I'd rather spend that time. I mean, as a VC, I've moved back 10, 15, 20 companies in my career. I want to be spending that time with people I really, really enjoy working with. I don't want to be working with assholes. He may create a $1 billion company. Well, those exceptions don't still define the rule. So we walked away because we saw that this guy's wiring was just messed up. Right? So yeah, there are some such examples, right? Quick, this thing on, I'll just share 2 examples over here. And I'll come back to my favorite example, Ola, and I'll talk about another company, Practo. So, Ola case is really important, right? How many of you all see regulatory risk when you look at companies? And not invest in companies because of regulation?
Very funny. I would look at it, but that does not differ much on the investment side. Yeah, you should know it, what you are doing.
So I'm more in your camp. Obviously, you have to be nuanced about it. You can't back an illegal business, obviously, but there are businesses which are in the grey zone just because of how outdated India's laws are. And anyone who looked at by the way, Ola had been seen by every VC in this country. Not once, not twice, 3 times. And every VC refused to write a check to them until we wrote the check to them. And Bhavish was in the market. Today all this sounds insane. Bhavish was in the market for 1 year, couldn't raise money. He had run out of cash. He had taken a small break from some of his existing investors. Nobody wrote him a check. Half the VCs didn't write him a check because he's like, oh, this 25-year-old kid going after taxi unions, he's going to fail. The other half walked away saying, nahi, ye to pura illegal business. There's a big regulatory question around this place. My view is the largest companies are created where there is a regulatory question mark. If you take online medicine delivery today, online pharmacies, there's a question mark. The government has got, there are multiple ways to interpret it. None of them are illegal. On? So I haven't, on crypto, I don't track that sector, so I don't know. But I think what I'm saying is, don't generally, and again, these are nuanced, right? So all these back companies are, but all I'm saying is, be really, really sure, because some of the largest companies, whether it's Uber, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's Ola, all of these are operating in that tiny, tight rope of, going against the regulators, against the incumbents, and these are, the way the laws are made is because they want to protect the incumbents. Today, why are all the large pharmacy chains like Apollo and Take Care and all these large chains, why are they, putting so much lobbying pressure to prevent online medicines? Because they know that these people are going to put them out of business. The business model for offline retail chemists doesn't make sense. The entire cab industry, why was it structured that way? To protect these large incumbents. There's no reason why it should be that way. So I would say that really, and I'll give you an example of what we did in Ola, right? I must have personally spoken to 250 drivers who were Ola. I called them up, I took their mobile numbers, I made anonymous bookings, went and sat, drove with them, and I remember one driver made this comment, and I asked him, tell me everything. Obviously, and my favorite pastime was talking to every driver and asking him, what do you like about Ola, what do you not like about Ola? And one guy told me, sir, Bhavish is a sajjan aadmi. And I was done. I just said, okay, you know what? The one question mark in this business was, Ola used to be a cash-only business. There was crores of cash coming in every day from these drivers, and that's very scary as an investor. And there's so much cash happening in the business. The day the driver told me, boss, you took sajjan aadmi, I was done. I said, okay, my biggest question in this business was, there's so much cash, there's a young founder running that company, how do I trust that person? And when you have random people who have nothing to gain by saying good things about this person, telling you some of those things, you're just done. I went and met I think we had done, we spoke to the Bombay, Chennai, Bangalore and Delhi RTO. Every single RTO, before we invested, we spoke to all these RTOs because we knew there's a regulatory question. But we went and met all of them. All of them said that the model is unclear. The model is it's open to interpretation whether it's legal or illegal. None of them said they will shut it down. Not one of the RTOs said we will shut it down. Despite of what they say in the media, because they have to please the taxi union. They can't go out there and openly say taxi union, no, we don't care, Uber is fine. But all of them when you go and meet them behind closed doors and you ask them, boss, what do you think? There's a real customer service, there's transparency of pricing, there's tracking, it's safe for women, it's convenient, it's cheaper pricing. End of the day, these people in a one-on-one will tell you, okay boss, it's unclear, it's a question mark, but we will not shut it down. Because somewhere in they understand that these people, this is good for consumers and they will never go against consumer preferences. So I think again, it just comes back to, do you have that work? And when Bhavish saw that we were the one VC in the country who was willing to take that bet and we said we don't care about regulation, let's just go out there and execute. It's because we had gone and spent time meeting those regulators. I don't think any other VC in this country would have gone and met the RTO of 6 cities before we invested. Right? We had done that work, so I think it helps. Where it came down to, when we invested in there was one VC who had given a term sheet to Bhavish, 15% higher valuation than we gave it to. Bhavish came back and chose to work with us. We were very fortunate that he did that back then. And we asked him later, after he signed the term sheet, we said, why did you pick us? We always knew you had another higher term sheet. And he just says that in the process of our discussions, I just found that you guys knew more about the sector than anyone else. You guys have done so much work, you all actually helped me understand my business better. And when a founder tells you that, that's the way you don't win these deals and coming at a low price. Right? And short history again, it's a very interesting anecdote. So we took 10 months. We generally, as VCs, we try and close deals in 2 months. So from the time we met the founder to the time the money's in the bank, we measure ourselves as 2 months. So our diligence, our pre-diligence, our term sheet and post-term sheet diligence. We try and cap it to maybe 3 months in the worst case. Ola took us, I think, 10 plus months to do it. And I remember for the first 2 months, we were just trying to get it comfortable. We did all these driver checks, all these reference checks, went and met all the regulators, etc., etc. And finally, we got to a point where we went in with both legs trembling because we knew there was a big regulatory risk we were taking. So it wasn't as obvious back then as it is today. It was a very scary deal to get done. We sent him on a term sheet, and that day Bhavish had an FIR against him in Bombay. And one of the existing cab companies, without naming them, basically had done chabi behind the scenes to some regulator, gave him some nice gift, and said, boss, ये illegal business चला रहा है, इसको बंद करो. So there was an FIR against him, and we obviously, I mean, it's scary. As an investor, you're just sent a term sheet and there's an FIR against the guy that you're backing. No investor will take that risk. So we picked up the phone, we said, Bhavesh, listen, we love you, but I think you need to clear this FIR case. We will still back you, but we can't, as an investor, I have people I have to answer, right? I have my LPs who have to answer. Tomorrow something goes wrong, they'll be like, what the hell were you doing? You had an FIR and you still didn't do anything. So we actually told Bhavesh, listen, you take 2 months, we're still going to back you, but clear the FIR. I think it took 2 months, we tried everything in the book, we just couldn't get the FIR closed. And again, we went and met multiple people, we just figured out that it was just harassment. There's no real case that is there against him, because he's not doing anything illegal. Is he doing something which is not defined under the law? Yes, but it's not illegal. So we took the punt again, and we gave him a term sheet again. I think this was after 3 or 4 months. That same day, there was a FIR against him in Bangalore. And we were like, so Bhavesh calls him, he's like, dude, you guys are bad news for me. Every time you're trying to send your term sheet, there's a FIR against my name. And I think we just, we said, okay, again, boss, same thing. We can't be signing a term sheet with you when there's no FIR. Do what you can. And I think 2 or 3 weeks later, we just said, you know what, forget it. It is what it is. This is the journey we're signing up for. There will be regulatory question marks along the way. But if you want to be part of a big company, and all this is again today sounds obvious. By the way, when I first met Bhavesh, Uber was a single, it was used to be called Uber cab company. It was in San Francisco. A lot of people over here may think that Ola is a copycat of Uber. Believe me when I say this, I had not heard about Uber. Bhavesh had not heard about Uber when he started. Uber was a small San Francisco black luxury car company. After our investment, Uber started going like this, and then this whole sector got out of land. Right? So sometimes you should have to take these points, and we could have very well been wrong. If the regulatory environment had become really heated, we would have very well been wrong, right? We could have potentially been sitting at a capital loss. So I think important to do that. In fact, I think I've covered along the way in terms of how do we spend time. 2 areas where we really help, and I think again as angel investors, most founders look up to us as investors collectively to help them. One is just help them hire. They've never done it before. They've never evaluated somebody to join their team. They've never hired. They've never fired. They've never made a hiring mistake. I think it's one area where we can really help them by experience. Second area is just strategic direction. They have a lot of this thing. I don't ever get into operational issues unless the founder asks me. So in the involvement of interference, generally there are 5 positions that the founder is hiring for. I tell him, you tell me where you need help. He'll say, Tarun, these 2 I need help. I'll tell him, okay, you don't worry about these 2 positions. Just simply do your thing. You continue to focus on the other 3 positions and everything else that you're doing in the business. These 2 positions, I will source, I will ref check, I will interview, I will come back to you with 3 names I think who are the best guys for this position. You pick the one you like. So I never also give one, because then it's like, okay, why is he asking me to pick this one? Right? Because does the VC have some connection with this guy? Right? Take 3 guys to him who you've done the hard work for, let him pick. So it's only where they ask us to help. We never get in. I've never gone back and told the founder, change the color of this button, or when I click this, why did this happen? Never. If you're doing that, you back the wrong line. It's as simple as that. You don't need to tell the best founders these small things. Exit is a question mark for all of us, so I don't have much to add over there. I think we'll learn along the way. But I think if you got these pieces of the puzzle right, this is the natural outcome, right?
Any startup where you say, okay, I did the first round, I don't want to do the follow-up round?
Very tricky, very hard. So again, as an angel, I think it's easier to get away with that because there's no expectation of angels to continue to put money. As VCs, if we say no, unless if it's a case where we have detected that there's some fraud in the company, or we've detected that the moral and ethical corporate governance issues are there, or we've just figured out that the guy just doesn't work hard. In that case, it's generally a conversation much before the next round, because you never want to again surprise him. So it's much before that saying that, listen, we've seen all this stuff, we're not happy with it, please count us out of the next round. But you can only get away with it in doing it in those cases where there's a real strong reason for you not to do it. If the company is, okay, growing well, you figure out, okay, the guy is good but not great. If he's getting another investor coming in, you can't, the minute you say, I will not do my pro rata, it's over. The new VC is always looking at the signals that you as an existing investor are sending. So there are times where you're just forced to continue to put money, although you may not like it, because again, goes back to our thinking, founders first. We backed him in all our right minds. Now, for whatever reason, if we're not as convinced, we would be doing disservice to the company because he's able to raise a round of funding from another investor, and by you not doing pro rata, the company would potentially get killed. So yeah, it's very rare unless there's a corporate governance issue. So okay, so let me just quickly say in terms of what do we VCs look for. I think we've covered large parts of that. Sectors versus founder, I think I've covered. I'm a strong founder first guy. I spend time to really get under the skin of the founder and understand them really well. I get them drunk, I meet them on weekends, I meet them at nights. The real person comes out generally when you get them drunk, right? And we do all of those things. It's all part of the game. When to approach VCs, I think I would say anytime. Early stage VCs, I have backed out of the 9 investments I've done now. I've backed 3 of them were founders without a PowerPoint, and I've written, sounds crazy now, but I've written a $6 million check to 2 guys with a PowerPoint presentation. Done an angel round of investment to a company. Within a month or 2 months, they're out in the market to raise, right? There's not much progress to show, obviously because the guys just raised the money. But at the same time, you don't want to be going when you need the money. If you're going to an investor and meeting him for the first time, when you absolutely need the money and you need to close around in the next 30, 60, 90 days, I as an investor only have a chance to evaluate one dot on a graph. But let's assume I've met him once, I've seen him again 3 months later, I've seen him again 3 months later. I actually have a trajectory to say, okay, you know what, every time I meet the guy, the business is looking better than it was looking earlier. The founder is grown, the founder is sharper. Back to the best founders, one more thing I've learned, all these 22, 25-year-old IIT kids, they grow at a pace that none of us can even imagine. There are guys I've met in 2 weeks, their brain is going at such a fast pace. Every 2 weeks you meet them, you're like, oh my god, this guy is like, just the pace at which they're growing is incredible. So keep that in mind. It's something that we've made mistakes where we met a guy, we thought he was too raw, you meet them 3 months later, they're a different individual. So it's important. I always say this, I invest in lines, not dots. One dot is never enough to get a trend line. So it's important, I think advice to any of the founders over here is definitely do try and engage with investors when they reach out. Most investors are reaching out not because they want to write you a check at that time. They are reaching out because they want to engage with you so that they see your journey. And by the time you're actually ready to raise the money, there is a clear trend line. And investors like to track startups that they will be investing. Very quickly, tech versus traditional, I've covered. Angel exit strategy, I think Series A is hard because if you've done the angel round and the VC is coming in with the A, again, remember, it's a signal. The fact that angels are willing and are eager to sell the A is hard. I would say B and C is probably the right time to sell. And most investors will be okay with it.
Many times VCs actually force out.
So even the A.
Yeah.
So I think I would say partial exit is fine, but at the end of the day, see again, you have to do what's right for the company. So if you think that by selling a little bit, you're helping the company sell that round. Like I said, we are on the side of always doing right by the founder and the company. So to that extent, what do we need to do? You should do it. But we've also had cases where angels have said, listen, I'm very bullish. Picks up the phone, talks to us and says, listen, I'm really bullish. I know you guys want more ownership. Fine, let's strike a compromise. I'll sell this much, but I really want to keep this much more. I think most investors will like that because we also want to have other people who are really positive about the company and are very good. We called valuation, very one-line answer, I don't know. It is generally, here is how much I'm willing to put in for X percentage stake. And the answers are very clear. Generally, Series A's are $2 to $5 million check for a 20 to 30% dilution. Series B is a $6 to $15 million check for again a 15 to 25% dilution. Series C is $15 to $25 million check for a 10 to 20% dilution. It's always in this range. Whatever, there's no way I can't value by revenue. None of them have profits anyway, but even by revenue, orders, none of that, right? So the only way I can value that is just put some benchmarks and say. The other thing I saw the Beardo team was saying, one strong piece of advice: don't raise money if it's going to last you 6 months. Wait it out and raise money if it's going to last you at least 18 to 24 months, more close to 24 months in this environment. in 6 months you will not have shown enough progress. It's taking 6 months to close around today. So if you start today, it will take you 6 months to get a term sheet from a VC. So if you're raising money only from 6 months, you're already too late. You can't be, by definition, you will not have enough progress to show. So one quick thing, points of friction with investors. My advice is the way we spend time with our founders, you have to fix these things before going in. If you're fixing it after you're in, it's already too late. It's already too late. So the best founders. Sorry?
You negotiate on SHA?
Absolutely. But we have a standard. It's very standard. It's I would say it's mostly founder friendly while protecting our interests. But we never ask for terms which are big. Like we never ask for senior link pref. We never ask for 1.5x. It's standard broad-based weighted average anti-dilution, 1x link pref, 1 board seat. It's very standard. We don't. Now if somebody doesn't want to give that also, then well, there's an issue. But if something which is the market norm, we will never ask for anything over and above. We've seen, by the way, some angel term sheets where there's a 2x and 3x link pref and a minimum 18% IRR and all that. I'm like, well, you shouldn't be doing angel investing if you don't all of that, right? Do we have time to go through this? Are we okay? 5 minutes more? Okay. So points of friction with investors, I would just say the best founders will spend time to learn about you. Every single company that I've invested in, before they invest, I give them 5 of my existing portfolio companies. 3 where things have gone well, 2 where things have not gone well, and I tell them please speak to all 5 before you take my check. Because you need to know me as well as I know you. I have done my homework. Founders are generally so busy just building up the business at that time, they don't have the time to do their work. I don't sign the term sheet unless they want. Because again, if they need to know how I am when things are going well, they need to know how I am when things are not going well. And if they don't know that, then I'm not the right partner.
How would you monitor deviations? If you want to stay hands-on, like you said, you maybe go in when they ask variations or some wiring change,
So let me correct that. I speak to, because again I invest at seed and A, every single of my companies, other than one and Tractor which today are very big, every single of the other companies I speak to the founder thrice a week. But not because I call them, they call me. They call me 3 times a week saying, Tarun, here is what happened, I need to do this, I need some advice on this, I'm thinking of opening up a new hub, here is the issues around that, any suggestions, I'm looking to hire these 3 people, can you help me with some reference? They call us.
So what did they do?
We've never invested in somebody. Like I said, a lot of the questions you're asking is actually stuff you have to solve pre-investment. If you have spent enough time, reference checking that person, if you've spent enough time knowing about that person, these things will not happen. It's very rare.
I mean, there could be
Unless you have been a terrible partner to them, where the founder says, you know what, this person's advice I just don't know. He's very intimidating, he puts me down, he makes me feel like he owns the company. We know. Every time a founder comes and asks us what to do, first we ask him, what do you want? And there are times where I've had a very different opinion, but I've always let the founder do what they want. Always. Not one case I've told the founder, I have a veto right on this as per the SHA, I want you to do. Never. It's always, by that time, by the way, in my head, I have already written off the company to zero. If there is a situation where the founder wants to do the wrong thing, and he's repeatedly doing the wrong thing, in my mind it's zero no matter what I do. Because as an investor, beyond a point, you can't fix these situations. The founder is the guy on the ground running the business. So if there is a case where you have to tell the founder what to do, by the way, I never invest when I think I'm smarter than the founder. Ever. Never ever have I made that mistake. If the founder is not 10x smarter than you are, I don't invest. At least again, going back to what is really required in that business. I may be better than him in some areas, but most often he is better than me by at least a margin of 10x. In the areas that count to build a business. So again, there are times, I'll give you an example. Last week, there was a guy that one of my companies wanted to hire as product head. We were paying him a crazy salary of some 65 lakhs plus some crazy swaps. I interviewed him, I came on, good guy. The guy's resume is fantastic, right? I spoke to him, I came back feeling, okay, good, not great. I picked up the phone and again, this is all without the founder asking me to do it. I reached out to 5 other people that the person had worked with, and I got again, good, not great ref checks, the table thumping, yes. I told the founder I wouldn't hire. And the founder said, Tarun, I've been doing this for 6 months, I've not found the guy, I'm getting frustrated, it's taking too much of my time, blah, blah, blah. And I said, fine, do it. I'm not going to say no, although I have a right to say no, because key management hiring is a veto item of the SHA. I will never exercise it. So I just tell them that, guys, it's your business. You own the company. You do what is right. The day they get used to listening to you, the companies are zero. Because he'll stop thinking. You have to train them to be responsible for the consequences of their actions. The day they take that one wrong hire, he will learn from that wrong hire. So at least that's the way we think about these things. Angel writes, I don't know what the question was. This was around what? Who asked the question?
Angels being elbowed out.
Sorry?
Is it angels being elbowed out?
Yeah, so like I said, I think most high quality VCs will understand, and we've done that, by the way, every single time. I don't remember a single time I've told the angel you need to exit completely. A high quality VC will never ask you. Never. We wouldn't want to do what somebody to do to us, we would never do it to somebody else. Growth versus profitability, I think changes by environment is the answer. I would say last year was all about growth because easy money was available. When you have money available, if you're not a category leader, you will not get money. If you're the number 2, number 3 guy in a space where already some people have attracted funding, no VC will back you. Very, very rare for a VC to back a number 2, number 3 guy. So very important that in that kind of situation, to just accelerate and say, you know what, I'll optimize on profitability and unit economics later. Today's environment, I think, is the exact reverse. So my advice generally to founders is, until you hit product market fit, and it's hard to define product market fit in every case, but until you really have understood the playbook on the supply side, on the demand side, have you optimized your operations, do you feel like you have control of the operations? Do you understand unit economics? Do you understand your customer acquisition cost? Do you understand your lifetime value? Does the formula make sense? Is your LTV greater than your CAC? Once you've figured this out, just push the pedal on marketing and just scale. Because again, you don't want to be here, you have to be here. Because if you're here, I've lost my money. Right? So but it's important, but if you do, last year there were a lot of companies which is the reverse. Before they had any unit economics, any model, all of them just started pumping hundreds of $1 million, and we saw all these big look-up campaign and look-down campaign, all that nonsense. Right? Nothing happened. What happened to those companies? They just didn't have a business. Marketing alone will not create it. So I think it's a nuanced answer. It's making sure that if you feel that you have got the product market fit, you have the right product at the right price, unit economics are making sense, after that I think you would be foolish not to really scale. Because again, you will not, if you're the number 2, number 3 guy, you will not be able to raise funding, much rounds of funding. Involvement in engineering we've got. So I think that's it from my side. Any further questions, any thoughts, any last things that you think we may not have addressed? Great. Thank you so much. I don't know if Thank you so much, Abhi. Thanks.
I think this was one of the fantastic, because I think many points which while we are investing into the startup, we miss. And many of you, of course, go for that. But fantastic. I mean, these are some reference check, and of course, spending more time with the founder. I think these are great. I think a lot of learning for VCAT's team also, and will implement these suggestions for sure. I think this is really eye-opener for many of us. I would invite Vishal, my board members from VCATs, and Abhishek bhai, please come.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.